broken brain.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Broken Brain. I'm your host and psychotherapist, Dwight. Good to be with you today. I am really glad to welcome Chris Revill onto the program today. If you listen to the program, then you know that Chris is the host and creator of the Let's Chat podcast with Chris Revill, where he has entertainers, singers, musicians, people who are pivotal in the fields of punk music and comedy. Gets a lot of really cool people on his show. You should check it out. Also the host of Let's Chat Live, a YouTube series where people who are members of the Let's Chat podcast community come on and interview new podcasters as well. And he and I also host a monthly Patreon-only, subscribers-only show called The Broken Chat, which is a slam together of Let's Chat and The Broken Brain. So we have all that going on. Today is the first time on the recording side of things that Chris and I have discussed his experiences with PTSD, which is a really inspirational story, as he also talks about the way that he embraced treatment. Chris is a case manager and caseworker and does social work with people in a hospital setting as well. And so he and I often talk about things with mental health and related. So today we're going to be talking about trauma treatment and EMDR, and he'll get into that a little bit more. One of the things we reference in this episode is an episode of The West Wing. I think it's episode 10, season 2. I looked it up earlier, so that might be right. A Christmas time episode of The West Wing where the character Josh, who is one of the staff members of the White House, actually goes through trauma therapy himself for a near-death experience. Because we talked about that, we got to talking afterwards, and we decided we're going to actually do an episode where we watch and then talk about the way that trauma and trauma treatment is represented in that episode of The West Wing. So you will find that over on the Patreon feed for those of you that are patrons at patreon.com/brokenbrain. And you can see the goodies and the, extra things we have for members over there. But for now, buckle up. If you're driving, definitely buckle up. But emotionally, make sure to buckle up as well. It's one of my favorite conversations I've had in quite a while. My friend, Chris Revill. Word up, Chris.
Hey, what's up, Dwight?
And then you can come back with I'm about to. How you doing?
I'm really good today.
That's good. That's good.
I'm genuinely answering that, not like usual, well, I'm fine, but like today's a good day.
What makes today so damn good? No, what is going on well for you?
Nothing particular. There's some I'm heading out for the town for the weekend for a funeral, which is never a good thing, like a happy thing. But I don't know. I just went. I was going to sound so like therapy. Well, I guess we're on the right podcast for that.
Absolutely, and emotion is a state of being, as we're going to be discussing specifically today, right?
So I did really good self-care yesterday. It's been a really, really trying week. It's a hard week for the family. My wife lost her aunt, which after a struggle with breast cancer is really hard.
Yeah.
We travel. We have the little one, but we both have been aware of the potential for burnout. And I've gotten through therapy. I've kind of learned. So yesterday I was hitting that breaking point. So I was like, can you please put Felicity to bed? I need to sit. And we've both been good. The house is clean. I've been going to bed earlier. I've been eating better. I've been drinking water. I've been while things have still been tough, I've really, really been focusing and working hard on the self-care as someone who's prone to burnout.
Yeah.
So, I guess, I don't know. I guess I'm happy today because I just got a lot of really good sleep. I got everything I need to get done and just feel good about it.
I quote you often.
Yes.
Just in general in my life, all the t-shirts.
Vice versa.
No, one of the things that I tell people quite frequently, even just in counseling when I'm talking to them, is action is a form of self-care. And I don't know if you're the first one to say that, but I always attribute it to you because I remember, I think you had posted that on social media following some political event in our past. I can't remember which one it could have.
I know what it was.
No, I know. I do remember. Yeah.
It wasn't political. It was like, because there's like that move, like, and I'm a huge Parks and Rec fan, but a lot of people do that. Like, treat yourself. Like, I think it was something about like the difference between treat yourself and self-care. Or like treat yourself is like, doing something, which you should treat yourself, but self-care is like, doing the laundry, making your bed, make sure you drink your water, kind of.
There's that other side to self-care, right? It's not just bubble baths and
which I also think is important, but treat yourself is like, going to the doctor to get your physical and, doing the stuff you don't want to do, but ultimately will make you feel better, which is a real struggle for me with, but I've gotten better.
Well, we have talked around this a little bit, and I've actually lined up and have recorded and produced a podcast that you were a guest on when you were over in the Rise Today inspirational podcast. I'm trying to remember if you have talked directly about PTSD and your EMDR treatments and things on this show, on The Broken Brain.
No.
I can't remember. We've talked about it here and there, but as far as actually doing an episode where we talk about it, I'm really excited to have the conversation.
Think we have.
Yeah.
I've talked about it publicly anywhere I can, like podcasts, and I've did a presentation for Pachakacha about it recently, which was really fun. But I don't think we've ever. I'm sure we've covered. Yeah, I don't think we have.
Yeah. Anybody who is a listener to the show knows you, of course. Chris, friend of the show, as they say. It's true. And it's an interesting. What's one of the things about getting a podcast people don't tell you is you get to use phrases like "friend of the show" to describe your own friends. And it's anybody knows, and especially those that are on the Patreon, because we do it's funny. I always call it our monthly Patreon show. You call it the Zeitgeist. I call it the Broken Chat because it's the Let's Chat and Broken Brain jammed together. We call it monthly. We've been doing it about every 2 weeks or so, actually. Just really because we enjoy doing it.
Excuse. Yep. It was like, it's for the podcast / we just needed a way to hang out without, but we have kids and jobs and hobbies and careers. So it's like, you got to schedule yourself. You got to be that's self-care, baby.
Yeah. No conversations that we aren't recording like suckers. Come on. That's for the civvies out there. I want to, this kind of grew out of our back and forth thing we were doing, just texting and stuff about talking about different ways that people treat trauma. And, and I've been wanting to have some people come on, lining up right now, getting some people who are practitioners of EDMR to come on and talk about it. And I thought, oh my goodness, what a wasted resource. I have like one of my best friends here who is like a graduate, if you will, of EDMR training. Who has gone through this yourself and a much more valuable insight to be able to give. And we haven't really talked as much about it here. So do you want to give people a little bit of background first?
Sure.
Into what brought you into what background of your trauma first? I mean, I guess is a good way to start. For those who haven't pieced it together.
Sure. So I guess my formal diagnosis would be CPTSD, like with childhood or compound. But the long, which is a diagnosis that I got diagnosed later on after I got the initial CPTSD as I went through like the therapy process and stuff. But so long story short, my wife developed preeclampsia and then had like about 2 days, 5 hospitals, whole bunch of stuff. So basically, long story short, she had preeclampsia and then ended up having to have a C-section and then had a postpartum hemorrhage bleeding that took 3 additional surgeries to recover from, all in the same day. So and the day that she had the C-section and gave birth, she had 3 surgeries as well, and almost lost her life. So then there was and the way it worked, we were at Women and Infants Hospital, but then at one of the surgeries, she had to go to Rhode Island Hospital. They're connected underground. They're next to each other, but different hospitals. So that makes communication very difficult. So there's a large part of the day I just had this brand new baby that's in the NICU, and I was under the impression that I didn't know she was alive or dead. Like in the back of my head, I think I always knew she was alive because I thought I would have like felt some seismic force if I lost her. But
there wasn't any communication about that, which seems a pretty important point.
Yeah, that's just how I work in the hospital system and stuff. I mean, everyone was wonderful. So there's just between that and then pretty much then she was in the NICU for 8 days, and then following up like within that year, a bunch of like My poor wife had to get gallbladder surgery removed. My poor mother-in-law came to visit to help out, and she tripped, broke her arm on our steps. We got broken into our house on my birthday, like within like a year.
That part of the story. I didn't know the broken arm or the breaking in part. That's
Yeah.
terrifying as well. So talk about
what's
complexity.
It would be, but when it happened, it didn't bother me because I was like, oh, whatever. I was like, Victoria almost died. Who cares? So
yeah, exactly. Talk about putting it in perspective.
Yeah, so it was just like a year of just like the first year of Felicity's life was the worst experience of my life.
Can I throw out there too? And I guess if I can't, then luckily we can edit it. You can tell me. But for those who don't follow Chris, personally on their personal social media and have connections behind the scenes, or whatever, leading up to, I don't know I don't know that I know many couples who have been more expressive or open about the journey that they're having. And I know that you guys had so much trouble. You went to great trouble, lots of treatments and expense to get pregnant in the first place. Also, you guys really have wanted to be parents for so long, because I know even before all the in vitro and stuff, you told me about how Father's Day and Mother's Day were pretty triggering for you guys when you didn't have children, right? Yeah,
then I forgot. Yeah, God, that's so funny. Like when you're going through it, it's like it hits you, but then worse things happen and you forget about them. But yeah, before, and that all was about a 2.5 year struggle with IVF leading up to the actual day of, which is weird because then I forget about all the IVF stuff, though at the time, it meant everything. But then, once the kid's here, but it was like a good few year periods for just kind of a lot of stuff wasn't going great.
As I just remember, it stood out to me so much of just seeing you, and just knowing that you like have such a big heart. Right. And here's this guy who is already a sweet dad, just like with a universal adapter. Going around being like, I could just see you one of those guys that if you never had your own children, you'd be out there parenting people. I mean, you know what I mean? You're a mentor by nature. That's who you are.
Yeah. I'm a pretty great uncle as well.
Yeah. And,
little kids are so fun.
Yeah. And so I just remember during that time thinking like, man, I just hope this works out for them. And when
me too.
When it was so scary, that was, that must have.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did it? I mean, I'm projecting myself here, my own feelings. Did that deepen how hard it was? The fact that it had been such a focus and you were working for it and looking forward to it so much?
It definitely had to grieve that experience of not getting all the things you kind of expected from it, like all that stuff. And I think sometimes I have the issue where I don't fully process how hard things are or bad things are. But I remember one of the nurses at the first hospital telling me if the nurses aren't nervous, then don't be nervous. And I remember that was the first thing they told me. I was like, okay. And then the rest of the day, seeing all the doctors and nurses always being nervous, I was like, that's not good.
Yeah.
We also had a doula, which was incredible. But and our doctor, actually now my PCP is also my wife's gynecologist is also a primary care doctor. Dr. McGee is one of the most wonderful humans on earth. She actually came to rounds to visit Felicity in the NICU on her day off.
Oh, wow.
And she had him go to the rounds. And then she sat me down and she basically was like, you need to understand that it's a miracle that Victoria is here.
Yeah.
She was like, you have to understand that she was on death's door. And actually at one point I remember being in the hospital, I think it was going in between surgery 2 and 3, Dr. Roush and another doctor found me and that came to so basically the whole day I'm just wandering around the hospital. I'm literally a physical mess because I didn't change, I didn't shower. I was just, wasn't doing good. And they came to me at the NICU and they're basically, the short of it was like, do you have anything to say to Victoria? Which is their code for, do you have any possible last words for your wife?
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't breathe. I couldn't talk and I kind of collapsed. And first time in my life, a doctor hugged me. They just kind of hugged me. And I was but the thing is during the day of, I was awesome. Nothing bothered me. I was fucking rock solid. Mm-hmm. I was communicating with Lauren, my doula. We were managing everyone else. We were figuring it out. I figured out my entire life with what it was going to be like as a single dad. I was like, all right, I'm going to move back to Connecticut. I'll work at Starbucks for insurance. Who needs money? I can live with my parents. And then we'll get my great in-laws who are super involved. So we'll get extra support. So that's why it's called post, right?
Well, no, absolutely. And I think that that's true for a lot of people. And I think that's even exacerbated, is my understanding, by anybody with, if you have any kind of ADHD or if you're prone to anxiety. Anxiety is all about battlefield thinking. And when you're on the battlefield, so many people who are likely to experience anxiety, right, do well in a crisis because anxiety is crisis. You're in crisis all the time. So you do get good at it. And there's also, it goes back to that action as a self-care. You can do something when you're on the battlefield. You can duck, you can shoot back, you can hide. Those are the three big ones I'm aware of. Not a battlefield trained person here. But
and I was
try to survive.
awesome at that. Yeah, and I work in the hospital. I work in a hospital, so I knew the system. It's a hospital. I was like, all right, well, I called the hospital. They had no record of her, but I was like, I know how this works. So I remember I was walking over there. It's actually barefoot for some reason. Well, that's because I was so out of it, and someone had to pull me aside. I remember the nurse practitioner saw me in the hallway. And she's like, "Sweetie, what are you doing?" And I just kind of broke down. Couldn't talk. Kind of explained everything, and she's like, "Give me your name. We're going to take care of this." We had wonderful, like our doctors, our nurses, the people were just incredible. And then they gave me a phone number. They're like, "Give us your number. Do what you got to do. We will call you when we know anything." So I think it was like 7 or 8 hours later, I get the call. I remember I was sitting in the cafeteria with my brother and my sister-in-law. Because I was like, the whole day I was like, I just got to get ice cream. I just got to get ice cream. That's all I need to do. That was like my get through the thing. I got the call at like 7 p.m. that she was going to be coming back, and she was alive, and she was coming back. And I remember just bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just like, it's the worst experience of my entire life, to be quite honest. And,
absolutely.
yeah, but like the thing was, I was just, I don't know. I felt like I was so calm and cool and collective. I was like, I got this. And then, then the next day, and then Felicity was in the NICU. So there was never even like a moment, and you're a new parent. So it wasn't even like this thing happens, and then you get to sit down and be like, can you believe what just happened?
Well,
wow.
That's the thing. I mean, the thing that you don't think about when it comes to having a child is that you go home with a baby. And of course you think about that. Of course you're aware of it, but at the same time, you're not really, because it's like, oh yeah, everything is like impaired by the presence of a baby now. It's why they tell you when you have a baby, they say, take advantage of the nurses are able to watch the baby for a minute while you take a nap. And some people, especially first-time parents, feel guilty, like, oh, I shouldn't do that. And it's like, but in your case, it kind of ripped that away to where it's like, no, you're not even allowed to touch and your child.
I could touch. Right? I held her.
It wasn't. So it wasn't that intense. Okay, it wasn't like you were allowed to hold her. Okay.
I got to hold her once, but because women are able to regulate their body temperatures with brand new babies, which is incredible. But I'm not. So I held her. I got to hold her right when she was born, and then once after that, I got a little skin to skin. I should send you the picture. My brother took it or sent. Because I think that day I was like, I remember not letting anyone. I told everyone not to come. I was like, just everyone needs to leave, because like all my family was there. My in-laws, my brother, my parents, like everyone came to visit because they're all wonderful and helped out with like the rest of life simultaneously, like getting cars, all that stuff. And my brother took a picture of me holding her, and he's like, you could see the shell shock in your face in this one picture. I'll send it to you. It's pretty funny. And then you go home with this baby. And then on top of that, she was a NICU baby, big for the NICU. She was 4.9 pounds. So 4.6. So she came home at we ended up coming home and she was like just under 5 pounds. So then on top of that, you're coming home with a brand new baby. We had a visiting nurse at first. So you come home with a baby to begin with, but also like a 5-pound baby that they're scary looking.
Yeah.
Like they're pretty fucking ugly.
Well, and they don't send any nurses home with you. That's the other thing I've noticed. That's at least for me. They never did with any of our children.
Yeah.
And
we had a traveling nurse come once a week.
That's better. Yeah. But that drive home is nerve-wracking because you realize that we're kind of on our own. And then it's compounded with the medical needs of your child. But then you've also...
Well, and then my poor wife just had 4 surgeries.
This horrible experience. Now, did you find that people tended to assume that it was just happy times? Like, hey, you made it through. You have this baby. Good for you guys. Thumbs up.
No, not at the hospital.
Yeah. Oh, no,
I meant little.
I would hope not. I meant, I was kind of thinking more like people that after. Did everyone just say like, oh, that's a good thing? Or did people anticipate and understand that you'd been through such a trauma?
I did as things would go on, I did a lot of trauma dumping. So I think I probably held my cards pretty close, but I don't recall how open we didn't hide it. But I remember not announcing her birth because she was premature, because we just couldn't even I remember her being born, and we had we waited like a week to even tell anyone.
Okay.
Like, cause we were just so like, and then, you know, some people would mean well and they don't know how to respond. So like, well, at least you got her out of it. I'm like, thanks. But you know, that's, yeah, but you know, it's not an easy story to hear. So I totally can get where people coming from. So like,
People don't know what to say. Yeah, totally. I
yeah,
get it. Yeah.
yeah. The people in our life are super, super supportive. And like, our network was like, and a lot of times people pulling us aside and every time telling the story, just watching people's jaws drop.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and Victoria being the strongest motherfucker alive because she, you know, she had 4 surgeries, including a C-section in one day. And by the following day, so she didn't get to see the Felicity for, I think, 26 hours, which, you know, that's hard for her as well.
Mm-hmm.
She like took a shower the next day and like all the I remember all the doctors, every single doctor, our PCP, Felicity's PCP, our IVF doctor, every single person came to see us. And it wasn't clicking that it was a miracle that she was alive.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and, they couldn't believe it that she's like, yeah, I had to see my baby, you know? And then she, you know, Victoria ended up having some really severe postpartum depression as well from all this, that she's able to do the inner work as well. And, yes, but yes, to get back to your question, yeah, people in our life were like beyond amazing and supportive. Like people would come over to help watch her. My mother-in-law, they lived in Jersey at the time, would come up for periods of time and just leave just nothing but like chicken cutlets in the freezer so we didn't to cook.
Yeah.
We had our upstairs neighbors. Yeah, I can actually tell this story. One of the nicest thing I have to say has ever happened to me is my coworker, friend, and neighbor, Will, which you would be a great guest for this because he used to be a peer specialist with me here. But anyway, I forgot. I was on my paternity leave, and his parents had died and left him like a certain amount of inheritance, and they didn't have any kids. He doesn't have kids, but he's Syrian, and he was saying he came downstairs one day. It was just when I was home with Felicity, and he was telling me that it was like a practice in his Syrian culture to like when people have a baby, like blah blah, and he just takes out like a wad of cash. And he's just like, here, take an extra week with your daughter. And it was honestly the nicest thing. So I got to take he gave me like basically a paycheck. So I got to take an extra week off with Felicity after all this happened.
Yeah.
Like, no, one of the most, yeah. So, you know, when times get tough, you find nothing. The beauty is you find these just incredible moments from people you'd like, I didn't know we were that close.
Yeah.
You know, like it was, I'll never forget that. I got to stay home and thank God I live in Rhode Island, where we're one of 2 states at that time that offered TCI, which is temporary caregivers insurance. So if you have a adopt a child or a sick relative, you can like basically like a short-term disability. So I got to stay home with Felicity, which was great. But yeah, so our support system was incredible, but all the realizing things went bad didn't come to like way later.
How
until
did
like
that
maybe
start to come up? Yeah. What did you start to notice?
it's the most perfect story because of course it has to be pop culture related, right?
Of course.
So I've worked in this field. I've worked in the behavioral health and field for the last 10 plus years. And I had no idea. I thought I was fine. Though I should, you know, I look back, I remember I stopped finding joy in stuff I liked. So it's kind of sinking into depression. I quit doing Let's Chat. I never actually told anyone I quit Let's Chat. Like I had written out a statement. I got too depressed to even post the statement.
Mm-hmm.
I left the Core Temp Arts Network kind of abruptly. Like I just like started packing up. I'm like, I'm done. I don't care. I can't do this anymore. I'm just sick of it. And I remember sitting at the computer and I had like my neck really was hurting. So like, all right, cool. I'll get a massage. So I went to get to the masseuse to get a massage, and it still like really hurt. Like I got to the point where I couldn't move my head, and I was getting like really worried. And then Victoria, my wife of all people, she's like, I think you need to see someone. I think you have PTSD. I was like, why do you think that? She's like, well, don't laugh at me. But there's an episode of West Wing with Josh Lyman has PTSD.
The Christmas
yes.
one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So she actually put it together. Maybe she knows PTSD, but she started recognizing some similarities to the episode of Josh Lyman's Christmas episode of the West Wing.
That was a great episode. Actually, you know,
I love it.
We could do a whole thing on that, but that was a great episode where there was, if I'm not mistaken, there was some kind of a active shooter situation, or there was some kind.
Yeah, he gets shot.
Yeah, and he was shot, wasn't he? Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really, really touches on how the thing that I remember about that standing out even more than that he was shot, because obviously I'd forgotten that part, but is that how sneaky the trauma was, that he was just so sure that he was fine. And then
Oh
it
my
was
God,
like,
me
hey,
too.
remember when you freaked out when nothing happened? Oh, no,
Yep.
no, something happened. No, nothing. There was a trigger that was, I think, a bell on a tree or something. And
It was
yeah,
the White House had bagpipe players.
that's what it was.
And
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, and then he's like, in your head, bagpipes equal a gunshot.
Yeah.
Because that's how trauma works. It's not 2 + 2 = 4. It's 2 + 2 = a bag of potatoes.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, great showcasing that dynamic of not always knowing how you are. So wow, that's very interesting that it came up from that.
And you think I would know because I work in the field. I know all this stuff. Like this is I deal with people every single day who have these types of diagnoses and triggers. But like at no point did I not realize that I was driving completely blacking out and ended up places with my face all wet and not sure why. Or like I was having night terrors, which I was unaware of. And Felicity was sleeping in the room with us. So like Victoria's like, here's me waking up screaming. Yeah. Like it's all that stuff you should know when it's happening. But like, it didn't click. I just thought it was fine. Or like, well, I knew if I thought about it, it made me sad. So I just didn't think about it because it would make me sad, which seems healthy. Turns out that was the wrong idea.
And the kind of thing that we would always you wouldn't tell someone you're sitting in your office, have someone come in getting help and saying like, I just avoid thinking about trauma. You wouldn't go, that's a good idea. But we do it to ourselves. And I think sometimes having knowledge and being a caregiver leads us to actually be a little more blind to that because we think we can outsmart it somehow. Right.
I thought I really thought I did. I did not recognize any of it didn't. Well, it's also so hard to figure out because you just have this brand new baby. You're not sleeping, like you're not sleeping at all on top of all that. Like no matter what, it's a hard experience. Even everything goes perfectly. Even if you have everything goes the way it's supposed to and you have a great support system, having a baby is still the hardest thing you'll ever do.
Absolutely. And it's so easy for things. That's what I think we forget. And a lot of times is something that's hard to explain or even depict if they try to show it. Movies or whatever, is that our life is ongoing and it keeps moving, and life isn't about pulling into, generally speaking, it's not like pulling into a Jiffy Lube every now and again to change your oil. It's more like trying to change your oil while you're driving on the highway, right?
Yes.
And because it's always moving like that, you don't notice it sneaking up on you. I always tell people about like when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, it was after I was an adult. It was after I was working in mental health. It was after I was a therapist. And it took, and there have been times in my life where it took personal crisis to get to a point where it's like, I guess I should really do some work and get some diagnostic and work and therapy done. And that's the way it is for a lot of people. You'd think, wow, wouldn't you see that coming? Well, maybe smarter people than me do. But the fact is that a lot of times that's when we pull the car over, is when we're in crisis. It's not, just proactively pull the car over and see how things are until we have to. So I think it happens, and it's an important thing to be talking about so people know that that's what happens, even if you have some knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, and during that first year with any kid too, there's a couple hospital visits, stuff like, just all the other stuff that happens, you're not sleeping. And oh gosh, so she was underweight. So like she had to eat every 3 hours. I remember like just staring at the doctors. I'm like, well, when do we sleep? And then they're just kind of staring at me like, you don't. Yeah. It's like, what?
You don't really do that. Yeah.
So like between that with the not sleep, and then on top of that, you're already sleep deprived and exhausted. It's really hard to toy out of is this normal? Is this, it's just, everything, it just, nothing would even could register if it tried. I was like, of course it makes sense. I haven't slept in 3 days.
Absolutely. One thing that does help with some knowledge and that connection that you do have to the field is that you sometimes once we're at that state of crisis, we are a little more willing and maybe a little more aware of what to go looking for. And yes. I was curious, did you go right for EMDR treatments right out of the gate, or was that something you were aware of?
Nope, never even heard of it. And I'll tell you the story, a quick story of because I didn't know what EMDR was until I sat down in the office. So I found a great therapist. Dr. Didi, and then my company, it's about maybe a few months into working with her, doing really well. It was like just more traditional CBT, DBT. I forgot which one. My company just happened to change